Welcome to the TMRN Time Monk Radio Network. I'm Jules, and today is Saturday, the 18th of June 2011. Today, during the third night of the ninth wave, we have the great Swedish thinker, researcher and author, Dr. Carl-Johan Calleman. Dr. Calleman's website is www.calleman.com. Carl, welcome to the WebBot Forum Roundtable.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be there.
It's a pleasure to talk to you too. The WebBot Forum administrator is Fox, and today he'll be doing the recording and technical support of the show. Several members of the forum were kind enough to join us tonight. They include members Lua, Peace for Gaia, Lenny, Gem D, and Five Cook. For listeners, this interview will assume you have a fairly good understanding of Dr. Calleman's work, including his research into the Mayan calendar and consciousness. There are many video interviews of Carl on YouTube, as well as great articles at his website, www.calleman.com. This interview will be available on YouTube for free on the WebBot Forum channel and at webbotforum.com. Dr. Calleman, are you ready for the interview, sir?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. First question we had for you, sir, is are you familiar with Cliff High and his forecasts?
Well, I wouldn't be. I'm familiar with the basic ideas that is behind all of this, but I would not be. You would have to fill me in on the specific predictions that he's making at this point.
Okay, you're familiar with the premise that everybody is psychic and they leak it out through their instincts and the words they use and the movements they make.
And it makes a lot of sense. The whole approach is very ingenious and very, it's a sign of our times, you might even say, that it sort of records, as far as I can understand, the subconscious of humanity or the psychic unknown abilities of us that maybe at this point is sort of developing rapidly also and coming to the surface in a way it's never been before.
Thank you. We have a first question from Lua.
Thank you. Carl, I understand that there are 5 different calendars that the Maya used, and that the pyramid calendar spanning the past 16.4 billion years is where you discovered the date of October 28th, 2011 as the end of that calendar. I have several questions relating to these various calendars. Were all of these calendars used to calculate the passage of time, and why are there different methods, different calendars within the same culture?
Yes. Well, it's a very big question, and I will just choose to address a few aspects of it. I'm not sure if I know exactly what you're referring to when you say 5 different calendars. It's a little bit arbitrary. I think that there is a calendar system that exists with a number of interconnected calendars. And these might have had different purposes. One is the Hab calendar, which is the 365-day calendar that's been used since time, what's it called, forever, basically. And it's just basically meant to reflect the solar year. Then there is the Tzolk'in calendar, which is a 260-day calendar. And it's quite different. It's not astronomical. And then there are the 9 waves, long waves, that are described and metaphorically shown in the pyramids of Tikal or many other places as well. So a number of small, I shouldn't say small, but in a sense much less famous, much less used calendars. There is the 819-day calendar. There is the 52-year calendar, and so forth.
Well, are they all basically parts of the same calendrical system, to determine the passage of time? Or are they being called calendars just because they cover a period of time? But might they be like when I have read your books, what I have felt was that that your calendar on the pyramid period of time, the pyramid steps, was more like a historical chronicle rather than a calendar.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused about the use of the word calendar in relation to this, passage of time.
I think that's very understandable. And to begin with, when I've written my books, I have sort of selected calendars. I have selected those calendars that would have been for the most prophetic value for us living at the current time. So that's an important thing to know. If you want to give a complete overview of the entire Mayan calendar system and all the calendars that exist, it becomes very complicated. But it also would include such calendars that, in my view, has never been shown to be prophetic in the true meaning of the word, and maybe is not what we should focus on at this particular time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's. I think it's important to know that I select those that seems to have this prophetic meaning, and it's very interesting that you're bringing this up, because the nature of these different calendars are so different. There are truly astronomical calendars that the Maya use. For instance, the Venus calendar, where they follow the four phases of Venus. That's really truly a astronomical calendar. Then there's the Hab calendar, which you might say is a pseudo-astronomical calendar, almost right, but not quite right of the solar year. Then there is the Tzolkin, which is really more like a matrix of divine energies that can only gets its meaning by connecting to other calendars, other periods of time. And then there are the waves, and the 9 waves, which the pyramid is a metaphor for.
Mm-hmm.
There are so big differences in their character, really, because these waves, you might say, I shouldn't say they're linear. A wave is not linear, but they're certainly directed. They're going from seed to mature fruit. And whereas the Tzolkin calendar is truly cyclical, and it's basically 260-day cycle that is being repeated over and over again. So it's a complex series of calendars that basically are interconnected, but they have different character, and I should say different purpose. And for us to make use of them, we will have to think a little bit about, and I think that's what I've been doing in my work, in how they relate to various processes and use them accordingly.
Okay. How did you determine the date, October 28th, 2011, how did you match that with the Gregorian calendar from the Mayan 9 waves? And do you know how the December 21st, 2012 date was determined, and how one date is different from the other date, and why?
Yes. Well, at this point, I think that there's been so much to verify the October 28th date that it's when I look back on how it was done, I'm quite amazed that it actually was done something like 15 years ago. And you might say that that the December 21, 2012 date is the archaeologically correct date, but it's not the energetically correct date. And so I had to work with this a long time ago and find out what was the energetically correct date. And for somebody who's familiar with the 260-day Tzolkin count, it's almost like a red flag that the December 21 date is for Ahau, which is not. Why is it a red flag? Does it immediately signal that this cannot be the right date? Well, it's because it's for Ahau in the Tzolkin, in the sacred 260-day calendar, and for this reason, it's not the last day of the Tzolkin. And this means that it just becomes completely disharmonious as an end date. And I think that there's even been mathematical studies to show that whereas the October 28th date fits harmoniously in a mathematical sense with the 9 waves, this is not true for the December 21 date. So the question then really was that at that point was first of all, it was quite clear that the true end date, energetic end date of the calendar, that you can really look upon as a culmination of a long evolutionary process, that date had to be 13 Ahau, or 13 light, so to speak, in the sacred calendar. And this doesn't completely solve the question, when would it be? And part of the reason it's the December 21 date has become wrong is the fact that it was based on a local solar zenith in the location of Itzapa, where this calendar was originally designed. And but it's one of the things that I found is that the people of Palenque, which is more a classical site of the Maya, about 1,000 years later, maybe so, they are actually giving an indication that that tells us what is the right end date, you might say, and it was on those 2 pieces of information, you might say, that I derived the October 28th date.
Okay.
So the situation would be a little bit similar to if somebody became absolutely certain that Jesus was not born on Christmas Day, and had to find out what day was he actually born at. And then be faced with all this huge tradition of people saying, oh, he was born on December 25 because we've been celebrating Christmas for 1,000 years all over the planet, or at least in the whole world of Christianity. And then for me then to come up and say, no, he wasn't born on that day, and try to sort of change the date of celebrating his birthday to his actual birthday. So there's a lot of resistance. There has been a lot of resistance, but in the recent months, I think people, it's no longer like the theoretical discussion. It's just people are becoming so influenced by this 9th wave that they can no longer deny that the right end date is October 28, 2011, this year. And, before people really had the knowledge of the, really calendrical knowledge about the Maya, in the 80s, there was a bunch of intuitive psychics who started to talk about these things, and they often would place the end of the calendar at 2011, but then came this wave of people going to the archaeology, and they found no, it couldn't be 2011. But as my opinion is that the psychics that were sensitive at that point, they were absolutely right, and but then the sort of a more orthodox archaeological thing came to dominate for a long time. And now we're in a situation that things are becoming very, very real, and I really think it's important that people align with the way it's actually developing, and not based on some kind of theoretical idea that somebody has in his head.
Well, speaking of that last wave, the universal co-creation,
Mm-hmm.
Ian Lungold in his seminars had a slightly different dates for the end of the last cycle, the beginning of the one that we're currently in. So he had it ending, I think it was February 10th, and then the new cycle beginning then and ending October 28th. Then you changed it to end and begin March 9th, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's an 18-day cycle instead of a 20-day cycle. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been puzzled about why it changed from a 20-day cycle to an 18-day cycle for the final cycle, and why it started a month later than he had calculated. Can you respond to that?
Yes. I had essentially, I was vacillating or wavering, I suppose, when I think in my very first book I wrote probably March 9th, 2011. But then in my second book that has become much more widespread, and which was the one that Ian would base himself mainly on, it said February 11th or February 10th of 2011. But I do write also in that book that I'm not quite sure about this. And the February 10th date was basically just the last of the Tolkien rounds before the culmination of the calendar. But it wasn't quite logical to begin with, because what would have been logical is to have a 20-fold difference in 20-fold increase in frequency every time you go to a new and higher wave. And in this case, you actually would start at March 9th, 2011. And it's sort of, I was wavering about these things until sometime 2010, where I just decided that the right thing is what I had originally thought, which was March 9th, 2011. And I think at this point, when a large number of people actually experience themselves the frequency increase that was activated at the same time as the earthquake in Japan, it really feels very strong. And this wave is stronger, if you like, and it's more clear in its shifting energies compared to the galactic underworld that we were in previously. That's at least my experience, and I think a lot of people would share that. So it's, I think he basically took that date and that I had put in that book, even though I had sort of written a question mark about it, and that's how it happened. It's still the Tzolk'in, the 260-day count. It's still a valid thing, but it's not exactly the ninth wave. So that is what I'd like to say about that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Laurie now.
Thank you.
Hi, Carl.
Hello.
I have a question about what comes after October 28th, 2011. I understand that this is a paradox in itself, since the end of the calendar could also be thought of as an end to time itself, or at least time as we currently perceive it. And as I thought further about this question, I came to better understand that what we are talking about here can't really be known by us now, which is remarkably similar to what Cliff has seen in his data, or I should say a lack of data after a certain point early in 2012. So asked another way, do you think that this calendar ending and the unknowable what comes after could be the universe's way of leveling the playing field so that no one has any advantage over anyone else, no foreknowledge of what is to come? And as I write this question, I think it can be no other way. Can you comment on that premise?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a very interesting observation also then from the WebBot project. It just makes perfectly sense. And I've heard before people, like psychic people, saying that they cannot see anything. And that's to me is quite understandable, I would like to say. So this is how I look upon it. October 28, 2011, there are 9 long waves that will come to a completion, to an end, you might say. And then what happens? We may wonder, because what these 9 waves has done, we should really look upon them as non-cyclical. I think they are waves, but they are very much direct. They go from seed to mature fruit, and the result is that human beings or anything existing in being influenced by these waves have sort of been compelled to move in the directions that the waves have been pointing out. What this means is that, as you probably know then, I've been able to successfully make predictions based in this model in several important cases. And the reason is simply that I have assumed that the new waves somehow are reflections in their overall development of the previous waves, or the lower waves, as you might say. And so everything has been directed, everything has been subjected to these waves and the influence that these waves have had on our consciousness. Now, what will happen October 28, 2011 is that all of these directed waves will come to completion. What this means is that I cannot predict anything beyond that point, because no longer do I have that fundamental tool that I've had in the past to compare the waves and understand the basic rhythm from seed to mature fruit. So, as the directed waves come to an end, there might not be any direction anymore in the evolution of the universe. And this is that's not, I don't even think a new cycle will begin, as some people think. No, I think it's undetermined. And life will be lived moment by moment by moment. And it's a big freedom in this. For the first time, it's a big freedom of not living under sort of the pressure of what the way the universe has created its evolution. So I think that's an important thing. What also comes to the mind is that people in India, for instance, they talk about the idea of enlightenment. They say that an enlightened person is someone whose actions cannot be predicted. Or, well, you're not necessarily enlightened because you're unpredictable. But if you are enlightened, you are unpredictable. You choose freely, so to speak. And so I don't think that after that point there is anything set. There is no predetermination of the course of event from that point in time. And it will be a completely new field, a completely new stage of creativity for us humans to live in. And I emphasize mostly the what sounds like the best aspects of this, that living in the present moment, moment by moment by moment, and being free, being not like a puppet that does exactly what the cosmic plan compels you to do. It just makes perfectly sense that from this point it would be very difficult to predict what is going to happen. I do not claim to make such predictions, except for in very, very general terms. And certainly I cannot make any timed predictions from that point and onward.
Okay, thank you very much. I like the idea of humanity graduating
Yeah.
and being allowed to play in the universe with all the other universal creatures. And now we have our questions in categories. We're moving into a category of consciousness and time.
Mm-hmm.
I have the first question. I've been tossing around the idea of humans becoming more psychically aware and trying to consider what the repercussions would be to such a development on a widespread global scale. This, too, would seem to be a way for universe to level the playing field. If it slowly becomes increasingly more difficult for those individuals in leadership positions to lie, cheat, and steal in order to control and manipulate the masses, it seems like this might be an obvious result of an emerging consciousness of unity. Please expand on the concept of unity consciousness as it relates to humans becoming more psychically aware.
Yes. In the model that I have presented and developed, each wave creates a certain frame of consciousness, is the word I'm using. And really what it is it's sort of divides the human mind along certain lines, especially those that are related to the left and right brain halves. And these divisory lines basically filter out certain aspects of our mind. And these filters then, they create sort of dark and hidden compartments of our mind that's sort of the basic thing I look upon. We have, in as much as we are in resonance with those fields, which are really all the fields that we have inherited prior to the ninth wave, in as much as we are, it means that our minds there are certain walls within our minds. There are divisory planes that separates things. You know, I can sort of think, I can see myself in different times in my life where that's been the case, where, you know, I for a long time when I was a laboratory scientist, there were big parts of everything religious or spiritual that were simply, they were hidden behind this internal wall in my head. And then there are all kinds of other kinds of walls, I would say, mental walls that we simply say, no, I don't want that, I'm not open to that, I'm not open to whatever. I'm sure we all have it, and the mind is full of walls. And what you might expect, though, from this transformation that we're in now with the ninth wave, it's that it's going towards the transcendence of these different walls. And as a consequence, we will not, it means that we are all becoming more psychically open, you might say. And it also then means that we're becoming more transparent, and it means that we're becoming more transparent to others. So other people will be able to read us better, you might say. On the other hand, that might sound very juicy and fascinating to be able to read us, but it might also be that as we go into this kind of unity, consciousness, it may not be that much needed. We would just feel that a certain person is very transparent, and we don't really need to read the mind of that particular person and sort of use our psychic abilities, because that might become less interesting even as we become more and more transparent. But my basic idea around this is that this particular unity consciousness wave, the ninth wave, that it transcends our internal walls and separating lines of our mind. And as we do, we will also ourselves become more psychic, and we will also be more accessible for anyone who wants to communicate psychically with us.
Thank you, Carl. It reminds me of Cliff's idea about unknown energies from space, or energies from the sun and their effects on human beings. So maybe there's actually physical components to your idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Five Cooks here. I have a question about time now for you, Carl. We've all remarked at one time or another that time flies and actually seems to be going faster these days. One common explanation is that as we grow older, our frame of reference changes, and in our mind, a year seems to pass by more quickly. Terence McKenna's theory of time wave zero postulates that as time passes, time itself actually does speed up. Events happen faster as we come closer to what he called novelty on December 21st, 2012. This closely coincides with your discussion of the time periods or cycles of the Mayan calendar. Mm-hmm. For instance, the sixth cycle, the national underworld, began over 5,000 years ago. Our current cycle began in 1999 and will be only 12.8 years. Even though the time periods are becoming shorter and shorter, from 5,000 years to 256 years to 12 years, as we come closer to the end of the Mayan calendar, the last cycle will last only 260 days. Each cycle contains just as much evolutionary progress or time progression as the previous cycle. Perhaps this is why time seems to be speeding up. Things are happening at a faster pace than when we were younger. I hope I have my terminologies and time periods right. Correct me if you see fit. I would enjoy hearing your comments, Carl, and opinions. Do you feel Terence's ideas of time wave zero run in agreement with your theories regarding the Mayan calendar, or are there major differences?
Well, I think there is if you just look upon McKenna's time wave theory, in terms of its results, superficially they are very similar, so to speak. But when you look upon it's if you really go into what is the basis of his time wave zero, I would say that it's quite an arbitrary theory that does not have a solid basis. It's more like through his intuition or maybe even hallucinations or whatever, that he hit upon something that seems to be very, very similar to the Mayan calendar. But the Mayan calendar, when you talk about these things, that it really has more of a solid basis of what is underlying this speed up of time. And what then, I just want to say a couple of things around in what sense that I think his model was arbitrary. In other words, it just sort of happens to fortuitously mimic the speed up of time. And the first thing is that there is no real logic to as far as I can understand, to applying this kind of King Wei sequence of the I Ching to the process of evolution. I mean, it's possible, but then that should have been proven. Secondly, the fractal mathematics will sort of allow almost any sequence like this, including the Tzolk'in that I'm using for this model, to make it seem that things are sort of reflected that the same basic what should I say, patterns of evolution are being reflected at in a smaller and smaller scale. But most importantly, it's he had then a model, and if I remember correctly, it was a 64-year model that he had as its basis. And whereas the Mayan calendar have theories about how to anchor its model in time, he simply chose the date of August 6th of 1945, the Hiroshima bombing, because he thought that was a very significant event. And it did not end up, as you're saying, on December 21, 2012, but I think sometime in November 2012.
Right.
And so it's an important thing. It looks a little bit similar, and but I would say that it's more like with some very advanced intuition, he happened to construct a number of or make connections between a number of more or less arbitrary mathematical structures to have it fit. And I don't dispute that it sort of looks nice and so forth, but I don't think, if you're actually looking at the theoretical basis, what is proposing, that there is too much solidity there. The simplest way of looking at it is to point out the arbitrariness of choosing the Hiroshima bombing date. You know, if that was August 6th, but if he would have, you could have, I would probably have argued that the end of World War II in May 8th of 1945 would have been a better date, and then he would have ended sometime in July of 2012. Or, you could have chosen September 1st, 1939, the beginning of World War II, and then you would have come to a wave that ended in I suppose, in 2005 or something like that. So it's really hinges completely on a anchoring of his wave in at some point in time that is, in my view, highly disputable. So that's the difference here. When you look at the model of the Mayan calendar with its speed up of time, because each wave carries a highest frequency, it's not based on one singular thing like the Hiroshima bombing. It's based on empirical evidence that is coming from so many sources, and it's a multitude of anchoring points at each particular wave that anchors the wave and leads up to October 28, 2011. So I must say that it's both theoretically and also in practice a very it's a superior thing compared to the time wave zero, and especially now when the calendar is coming to an end. This is the difference of a year or something like that is just means absolutely everything in our ability to understand what is happening.
Okay, thank you, Carl. I've always been fascinated by Terence, and I appreciate your angle on that too. Thank you. And I guess our next question is coming from Jim D.
Thank you.
Hi, Carl. I have a few questions for you. They're mostly on consciousness. Okay, so the first one is, you said that astrology keeps repeating itself, whereas the Mayan calendar actually accounts for time and how consciousness is changed by time. So are you saying in essence that history never really repeats itself because time itself has a consciousness and everything is always evolving and changing and never the same because time itself is actually somewhat alive?
Oh, well, no, I have not thought of it in that way, and it's an interesting angle. I guess what I've been saying is that I have emphasized that the Mayan calendar is not cyclical. The Tzolk'in is cyclical, I agree with that, but the longer waves are not cyclical. And what I mean by that is that is that history never repeats itself in an identical manner. It never goes back to the exact point in time in a cyclical fashion.
Right.
When you talk about history, that is the case. Now, if you look at astrology that you mentioned, and meaning in the sense of the Babylonian astrology, that's the most prevalent of astrology. It's based on truly cyclical processes of movements of different planets and so forth. So there is some kind of a disconnect, obviously, in between the planetary movement and the evolution of history. But the idea that time would be alive is it's an interesting thought. I have never thought about it. I cannot say that I embrace it, but it's and of course we have to wonder what does being alive mean
Exactly.
That.
Well, that's what I mean, is that time is actually conscious.
It's what?
Conscious.
Time is conscious. And what would that be? Like, you know, I tend to think of like more, like humans being conscious or animals being conscious. In a sense, you know, some living thing being conscious. And I haven't thought about this angle, and that's all I can say at this point.
All right. Well, it's just something I wanted to ask you because it's something I thought about.
Yeah. Well, one thing that comes to mind is that in many different ancient traditions, including the Mesoamerican, is that they used to show these waves, I believe, as serpents. The serpents were the metaphors that they would use for waves. And so, for instance, they would have these serpents around their tree of life, because the tree of life would generate these waves. And the serpent, obviously, is a living thing. And so they had a living thing or a living organism as a symbol for time waves. And so there might be something there to what you're saying. I just haven't thought about it much.
All right. Well, I have a few more questions. Let's go on to the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have stated that the Mayan calendar is a gateway to the worlds of consciousness, which the majority of humanity has been blind to through the use of false calendars. Do you feel these calendars were deliberately put into place to keep people from raising their consciousness and connecting to the divine?
No, I don't think they were deliberately. That's not my understanding of it. I think more that in certain time periods we have shifted. Our perception of reality has shifted. Our consciousness have shifted in such a way that we've tended to see time differently, and then in accordance with that, we've also changed our calendars in such a way that they no longer reflect the kind of divine plan that the original classical Maya 9 waves did and do, if we still want to use them. What I mean by this is that, for instance, when the planetary underworld, the seventh wave of this system, was activated, we became blindfolded. We were no longer able to see the spiritual reality or sensitive to the spiritual energies around us. That was because of a shift in consciousness to begin with, and one that made us see reality through a filter where we just saw the material reality, not the soul aspect of other people or the spiritual energies. Now, the result, what happened then was that the focus became all about creating calendars that very, very accurately reflected physical cycles, astronomical cycles, cycles of the material reality, I would like to say. And as that happened, the old, more spiritual cycles went out of use, and it sort of strengthened even more the materialist bias that this particular time period would generate. I cannot tell if it was intentional. I tend to think not, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, basically, what I was saying is, if there's an element, in consciousness or in the universe that would not want people or humanity to raise their consciousness level, that's basically what I was saying. So they would put anything out there they could to stop humanity from raising their consciousness level, including, making people stick to this calendar that energy-wise, it has no energy, basically, and it has the regular calendar has no energy or consciousness.
Yes. Well, I agree with that. I mean, certainly at this point, I think there might be forces of work that want to prevent any kind of that people really understand the direction where evolution is going, because that is likely to turn upside down the present system of rule and governance in the world. I would also like to say that calendars have been very, very useful for what shall I say, for religious political reasons. If people get the habit of using a particular calendar around certain religious holidays and so forth, it's really a form of indoctrination, you might say. And of course, we also have all countries have national holidays, and that is part of indoctrinating us in a certain mind frame. And so they're very powerful in that sense. They strengthen the established mindset of people in any culture, any religion, and any nation.
Right. Okay. So let's go to the next question. Since everything is an expression of consciousness, and we know consciousness can change and affect matter and other consciousness, how are the sun and the earth and other planets expressing their consciousness right now?
I'm probably not able to answer this.
Okay.
And not that I would be able to just answer it, but I'm not sure if I have some feedback. Maybe that's what I should say. But it's really also a question here of what really consciousness means. It's a word that it's very, very commonly used these days, and when you look at it, it turns out, I think, that we tend to mean very different things with it. I often notice that that other people mean something else than I do, and maybe I use it in a way that others do not. And this is it's a broad question. The word has such an attraction. People just feel attracted to that very word of consciousness, and anybody using it will sort of attract a certain kind of attention to it. But really, when you look at it, I think we use it in very different ways, and I have a feeling that you and I might use it in different ways, and we'll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to me, everything is conscious, including the planets, including the Earth and the Sun. Everything is conscious, and everything can affect consciousness. So, like human beings could possibly affect the consciousness of the Sun or the Earth. What do you feel that's true?
I would probably use the word to say that we are part of the consciousness of the Earth and maybe part of the consciousness of the Sun. And in that sense, maybe we affect it, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, and the next question is, you talk about in your book, you talk about the heartbeat of the Earth. And so I was wondering how the heartbeat of the Earth, how is the evolution of consciousness related to that?
Well, the heartbeat of the Earth is, it all comes back to my basic view of the tree of life as the central organizing principle at all levels of the universe. There is a tree of life that encompasses the entire universe. And then there it goes down, there is a galactic tree of life, and it's which is basically like a coordinate system, 6 directions emanating from a core. And then there is a solar tree of life, and a planetary solar tree of life. And all of those express shift points when there are shift points in the Mayan calendar. And this conforms to the ancient view of the Maya, that their calendar, the prophetic calendar, is about reflecting shifts in the tree of life. And the tree of life then is creating shifts, and these shifts happen with certain rhythms, and when it comes to the Earth, I see that as being the rhythm, you might call it the heartbeat of the Earth, because it comes then from the very center of the Earth and goes out in different directions. I lost my train of thought. I did the background, but I can't remember what the original.
Oh, we were talking about the heartbeat of the Earth and how the evolution of consciousness is related to it.
Oh yes, okay. So now I have explained what my view was of the heartbeat of the Earth.
Yeah.
The evolution of consciousness is in my view, it's linked to the tree of life, which is sort of a coordinate system, and its central trunk of our planet is like the polar axis, and emanating from that are certain lines that define a front, a back, a west, and an east, and a north and a south, and evolution of consciousness is, what I mean by it is when these when these polarities that emanate from this Earth's tree of life, when they change, and they change in such a way that they go into unity consciousness, in the sense that, and when they change in such a way that they broaden the framework for consciousness, that people have gone from relating to their family, to their tribe, to their nation, to their planet, and to their galaxy, and ultimately going towards relating their existence to the universe, to the cosmos. And ultimately, I think that's where we're all going. And that's, yes, everything then comes back to the heartbeat of the Earth. But the reason it does so is that the heartbeat of the Earth is a reflection of what I call the tree of life. I think what the ancients would call the tree of life, because that is reflected on all of these different levels and brings about a kind of evolution of our mind. I probably is the best way of putting it. I might sometimes, when I start thinking about things in retrospect, I realize maybe I didn't quite use the right wording. Maybe it's not an evolution of consciousness. Maybe it's an evolution of the mind, and that I've been talking about.
Okay. Well, that was all the questions I have for now. I'll be back in a little while to ask you another question. But thank you, Carl. And for right now, I'm going to turn it over to Lua.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carl. Advice from American Indian elders is that as mankind speeds up more and more, the Indian must slow down more and more. And I'm wondering how you relate this guidance to the continuously speeding up process of going through each of the steps of the 9 waves. Do you think the deliberate slowing down of our lives could help humans deal with the accelerating energy forces on the planet?
Yeah, it's a good advice. I think that the speed up is happening on the global level, and it manifests in a very direct political, economic, spiritual way, and there's no one that can stop that. But then the question is somebody not supposed to be part of this speed up of time? And I can see, I don't think I'm that person, because I feel strongly compelled to do certain things. And the 9th wave, with its very high frequency, has been even more compelling for me to act, so to speak, and act rapidly, because if you don't act rapidly in this very high frequency, you will miss the chance if there was something that was meant to happen at a certain point in time. But at the same time, I definitely respect people that are certainly not want to, there's a lot of change that takes place that are basically unnecessary, maybe even unwanted. Some people feel compelled that they have to do things just because the forcefulness of this particular wave, and implement novelties that may not necessarily be needed. So I can only say that I have full respect for somebody who sort of wants to slow down and not be part of the changes everywhere. I could imagine that a person that would be highly enlightened might be somebody like that, who would not be, who would more like to slow down. But I at the same time, I feel that on the large scale of things, this is not a choice that humanity has. and I'm not the person to tell what other people should do. I always see it as my mission to say the way things are, or what I can understand from the way things are according to the Mayan calendar.
Oh, okay, thank you. Do you have a theory about why the 9 waves started 16.4 billion years ago? And do you think that there is a God consciousness who has orchestrated the pattern?
Yes, the answer is yes. I think there is a God consciousness. And I think what we're going towards is exactly what you're using, the word God consciousness. That's what when the calendar comes to an end, that's when we attain a God consciousness. We're still human beings, but our consciousness will have shifted in such a way that we see things much more from the perspective of God. And I do think of everything as being a divine plan. And the 16.4 billion years and the whole sort of setup of different waves is something that has existed forever in the minds of God, in my way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think the Maya were able to see this pattern of development?
Well, I think they happen to live in a time and a place when it was much easier to be sensitive to these different rhythms. And I think now we are coming back to that sensitivity in our day and time and place, I might say, which then actually is the whole planet. Because we are recreating the calendrical system that they at one point invented, and so now it's coming back, and it's just this particular frequency is very strong, and it's very hard to deny that it's actually having an effect on us. And for a variety of reasons, I believe the Maya were living in a time and a place when it was also very strongly felt by them, the influence of the evolutionary waves.
Okay, thank you very much, Carl.
Hi, Carl. The world runs with certain physical laws. Granted, science doesn't understand all the laws of nature and the universe, but still, when trying to reconcile the speeding of or compression of time as we approach 2012 and 2011, I would think it would need to be explained using current laws of nature that our physical bodies reside in. The acceleration of time would assume an acceleration of atoms, hence increased energy. The only explanation I can see why there is an increase of energy and consciousness would be energy from maybe the center of the galaxy due to the alignment with the solstice sun and the center of the Milky Way. Now, not that I agree totally with John May Jenkins, but the alignment does explain the extra energy that could cause the acceleration of time and the increase in consciousness. What do you think is the cause of the acceleration of time and consciousness?
Well, my view is obviously different. And I don't necessarily see why a galactic alignment would generate any new energy, so to speak. Especially not since the astronomers say that if there was an alignment, it already happened in 1998. But in my view, this speed up of time and also the universe has been reorganized for 16 billion years. And the source of this is the tree of life, which is the cosmic tree of life. In other words, it includes 100 billion different galaxies, including our own galaxy. And in the big scale of the Mayan calendar, our own galaxy is then a very small part of what might have generated these energies. But I think it's somehow the way it works is that there is a particular pattern according to which these waves are generated, and that the energy it comes from. Yeah, I can't really have any. I don't think I have any direct explanation to how it works, but I do think to me it's clear that everything has to come from the cosmic tree of life, not from our local galaxy, because in my view of the universe, the central principle is as above, so below. And everything that exists at a lower level is sort of part of and a reflection of what comes out on a higher level. And I don't understand why a galactic alignment would generate any new energy, I must say. To me, it's just the continuation of the same mechanical cycles of our solar system that have been operating for a very long time.
Okay, thank you for that. Carl, with the acceleration of time approaching October 28, 2011, you mentioned in November on an interview with Jim Gilliland that the new level of consciousness could bring about the creation of a cyber civilization and a totally new way of relating to people. Based on the Webbot forecasts, my belief is maybe the opposite that will occur, and that the patriarchal systems will collapse and the changes in the sun and the earth's climate will cause a return to more of a tribal community with an agrarian lifestyle. Can you reiterate what you believe the world will be like in past October 28, 2011?
No, I think I probably I agree with you. First of all, when it comes to human civilization, we're talking about such a big thing that it's hard to see that it would sort of just change overnight. The way we're living is organized. But my current view, and I think I've had that probably since November, is that the world in the long run, after October 28, 2011, will go towards some kind of a web of different, you might say, exciting villages. Our world has sort of been very much developed, the modern world, civilization, has very much been developed based on a competition of countryside and city. Basically, cities have been exploiting the surrounding countrysides. And it's been a form of dominance. And the result has been that, people have thought, it's exciting to be in the big cities, and that's where things are happening and so forth. And the countryside, on the other hand, is backward. Things move slowly, nothing happens, and so forth. That's the feeling that we've had. But as dominance comes to an end, which I believe is a consequence of the ninth wave, I think we will go back to some kind of a organization of the world where we live in small villages, but we don't experience them as boring or backward or slow, so to speak, but we simply will no longer be living in cities that are exploiting their surroundings and putting down country life in the way it has been. So it sounds to me that, we are probably, you and I are probably aligned here, but maybe not. You can help.
No, that's fine. There's so many possibilities past October 28. We might even become a civilization one and travel the stars. You never know. I find a lot of merit in your 9 steps of Chichen Itza and the other pyramids signifying important stepping stones in levels of consciousness, your theory of the creation cycle of 13 heavens and the 9 underworlds. But it seems to differ with some researchers such as Graham Hancock and Michael Cremo that show semi-advanced or even very advanced civilizations existed based on out-of-place artifacts 12,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago. Some even consider past civilizations have had such a high level of technological civilization that matches ours. Another example is Joseph Farrell and his theories on the cosmic war based on information from the Vedic text, which would be at least tens of thousands of years old, which would put it in your cultural consciousness age. How do you reconcile this explanation where it seems that your stepping of consciousness would mean that there was a lower civilization in the previous consciousness ages?
Yeah, I think you're right there. I mean, if their suggestions would be true, then there would be something wrong with the whole evolutionary scheme that I have presented. My theory has the virtue of being consistent with, you might say, the scientific community's ways of looking at facts. And I would not, I have not seen any substantial evidence that there have existed highly advanced technological civilizations on our planet at an earlier stage. I've only seen circumstantial indications, like you mentioned the Vedic scriptures, but the Vedic scriptures, I'm sure, can be interpreted in many different ways. And I've never seen any actual artifact, or if there are artifacts from Atlantis or something like that, I've never seen anything that that seems reliable and that seems undisputable, so to speak. So I agree that if their theories would be right, then that would be very difficult to fit into my model. I just haven't seen evidence of a tangible source from their ideas, and until I do, I think mine is the most reliable.
And again, Carl, models are meant to be refined. So I guess I think there is something very, very much to your 9 steps of consciousness on and why the Mayans built those pyramids the way they did. But again, models are always there to be refined. Interestingly, the Webbot forecasts the majority of people not be in past October 28 of 2011 and into 2012, that the majority of people will not be able to handle the changes or energies, and they'll seize up and just stand frozen on the street, comatose and drooling. Is it possible that the end of the calendar creates a 2-tier reaction? Some people awaken and unleash their psychic potential, while others, unfortunately perhaps the majority, lock up in shock, not being able to handle the consciousness shift and extra energies. Could this explain why past civilizations have faltered and myths very much like the Tower of Babel?
Yes. Yes, I believe this is very, very possibly true as a sort of an end result of it. So I tend to agree that that's how people could come to sort of split up in different categories, and so I believe that is really very, very, very likely, and it may actually also then be related to these comets that are arriving, Calleman especially, at the very end of the Mayan calendar, and that it may trigger that kind of a separation in people. I would not know anything about whether these kind of scenarios would explain anything in the past, but it's possible. You know, there are certainly many different species that have gone extinct, and for instance, the Neanderthals, which were sort of our genetic cousins usually referred to, they went extinct, and we really don't know why. We know that they had bigger brains than we do, but and they were a little bit different from us, but from the Cro-Magnon people. But we really don't know why they went extinct, and maybe there was then some kind of a bifurcation point that created this difference, and one species went on and the other did not. And this may very well, something similar may very well come to be reproduced. It's likely even.
Okay, thank you. And this question is from Lenny.
Hi, Carl. I'm happy to be talking to a scientist who can talk about consciousness and enlightenment. My question is, in concert with the evolution of the universe and using our free will, you suggest that we are expanding our consciousness on a transformational path towards enlightenment. As we loosen the paradigm of our perceptions and we grow more transparent, we grow more psychic. When the state of enlightenment is reached, where the enlightened are unpredictable or truly free in their choice of actions, you write that there will be no reversal, no more lessons learned, and no more reincarnation. If we transform into enlightened beings, will there be anybody left here? If some choose to be here, will this open transparency among people or beings be enjoyable?
Oh, I would think so. I would think it would be very enjoyable, if nothing else, because of the novelty to life that it would bring. And after all, that's sort of very often what keeps us going. Novelties of different kinds and the attractions of trying something new. I can't tell, but I think the basic of the divine plan is really that we should be here. We should live in physical form, but it's just been a very cumbersome road to this enlightenment, because there are so many steps that have been necessary to provide the basis for some kind of a return to a Garden of Eden on some kind of a high technological level that I believe is coming. So I think that will be the to be here will be the life of choice for the enlightened.
Well, I guess that's good, because when I was reading your work, it seemed like you had said that they might not choose to come back, or we might not choose to come back.
I see.
After enlightenment. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not so clear either on what does exactly enlightenment means, except for sort of transparency, and I think it might be a new time for discussion about what enlightenment means.
Well, I liked what you said about compassion and being kind to one another.
Yes, that must be part of it, and it's part of the transparency, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carl, we're going to start with the creation part of our questions. And the first question is mine, and I'm curious about the Mayan interpretation of creation and your theory of the central axis and the tree of life. You say that the Big Bang does not provide a why for the existence of three dimensions, yet current cosmology does, and is anything less than three dimensions, it's simply too simple, so the universe would collapse on itself. With at least three dimensions, the universe will have what physicists call curl, and without the spatial equations involving gravity would collapse to zero. Cosmologists think the universe has three dimensions because it's the most minimal structure. Essentially, cosmologists are saying spin, for which you do need at least three dimensions, is fundamental for the universe. And I thought you'd have an interesting take on it.
Yes, okay. Well, I guess I simply agree with what you're saying. I should also say then that there is a Mayan mythology, as we would call it, around creation. And of course, I will never know whether they actually, in ancient days, meant the same kind of things that I do. It's just that it seems to make sense, this idea of assigning this recently discovered central axis of the universe, the role that the ancients would give to the tree of life. And it's really such a small step you have to make to say that this axis is the tree of life. And if you're willing to do that, then suddenly all of the continued evolution of the universe starts to make fundamentally sense, I would say. But what might be more important is that we then also can see that the continued evolution of the universe does not have to be understood as a random, accidental process, but that it actually emanates from this tree of life, or the central axis of the universe. So, in this, since this central axis and really is something that was part of the universe from the very beginning, it means that we really here have, just in that acknowledgement that this is the tree of life, we have an opportunity to truly, in a very deep sense, merge science and spirituality, because then everything can be looked upon from both of those angles, and yet be the same thing, the same reality from two different perspectives. That's and what you've been saying here about 3 dimensions as being the minimal thing, that is actually what I'm also saying in my book, and it just makes perfect sense. Maybe it doesn't, my theory doesn't explain why there are not more dimensions in the universe, but again, probably the simplest explanation is the best explanation for anything. Does this answer your question, or there was?
No, I think it does. As the last bit of time, I've been reading more and more about the Mayan culture, and I came across something talking about the city of Tula, and that the secret of peace was the unity of all things. And it kind of, what you said, kind of falls in with the unity consciousness in the tree of life, and I can see where you're coming from. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question. You state that after 10 to the negative 35th seconds that the three-dimensional axes emerge, and I was wondering what the universe looked like before them.
Well, I could say that I wasn't there to see, but it would have been interesting to see what was happening there. But I can only just imagine that it was sort of some kind of a core atom or something like that, a center of the universe before the axis would go out from this center and form the volume and the directions of the universe. And it's really, I really wouldn't know. It's just my imagination that would be the easiest way of explaining it.
You had talked about background radiation, the CMB, those studies indicating that the universe has always contained a potentially organizing structure. Would that be something that would flow with that? What the universe looked like before the Big Bang, or before it emerged?
Well, I think before the Big Bang, that's really the state when there is no structure. Maybe just a being, and the Popol Vuh talks about the universe before the tree of life was activated, and said that it would slumber for 7 eternities. That's how it was put there. It would slumber for 7 eternities, and
that's a long slumber.
That's a long slumber. That's Rip Van Winkle or whatever his name was. Yeah, it's a long time. And but it's really it's you coming into things that knowledge becomes impossible almost, I would say. We can only seek to find metaphors or something like that. It's just incomprehensible to us, I would say.
Well, since we weren't there, huh?
Well, yeah.
Also, you talk about the galactic underworld that has an elusive physical presence, dark matter. Yet, dark matter is nonetheless physically detectable. And so I was wondering if all levels have such a physical presence, however elusive.
Well, I'm not sure if I would agree that dark matter is something that is physically detectable. That you would have to tell me how it is. As far as I can tell, it is not physically detectable. But you do see a couple of effects that have made some people postulate that dark matter exists. My take on it is a little bit different. It is this idea that the systems of the universe is organized through some kind of a halos.
Yes.
That are providing the volume, the basic spatial organizational limits for any structure in the universe, and so in my view, there is no need to assume that there exists such a thing as dark matter, but you know, I am open to the possibility that I could be disproved here, but I haven't seen that yet. I haven't heard of anything that actually directly assigns this any kind of substance to this dark matter.
Okay. Well, I'm not a physicist, so I think that we've reached the end of my knowledge. It just simply, I know that I had read that there was, some people think that there's like 3/4 of the universe might be dark energy and 23% dark matter.
Yes.
But
oh, absolutely. That's the you would say the majority position of physicists. I'm just saying that. So you're not, you know, if you say that, you're certainly on aligned with what most physicists would say. It's just that I dispute that, and I dispute it because I have not seen any real evidence. It's a way of reasoning, but it's very indirect that they're using to argue that there is such a thing as dark matter. But you're certainly not alone. You're actually representing the majority position of physicists when you say these things.
well, it's always good to win over the physicists by at least acknowledging the things that they like to say. I have another question. Speaking of physicist sorts of things, you mentioned the fine-tuning of atoms is necessary for any kind of existence. Does that imply that it should have its own level, like the wave levels, where you begin with cell? You began the wave cycle with the cellular level, and I'm thinking, well, what about the atoms?
Yeah, why isn't there a level that developed the atoms sort of separately? Is that kind of the question?
Well, it's like you have things in a ladder, you know, and cell is the most primitive level, but really there's atoms.
There is, that's right. But the lowest level, it's not that it only develops cells. It did develop the basic atomic materials of the universe. It did develop the molecules. It developed the cells, but it also developed the planets and the galaxies and the overall structure of the universe. So it's the reason it's called cellular underworld is that in terms of what kind of life, what kind of consciousness that these different levels are generating, then it would be most appropriate, I think, to call it the cellular level. But that doesn't imply that it also that these cells, they do use obviously atoms and molecules or whatever to constitute the cellular structure.
So it's inclusive of it then? Would you
Yes,
say that?
Yes, I
Okay.
would say so.
Okay. And I have a very interesting question. I listened to YouTube of you with Juicy Living Tours, and you
Yes.
mentioned something about the comet Calleman.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I'm actually right now I'm writing an article with it and about it, and I consider it a very important article. So I'm weighing every word very seriously, and I will be Friday in a discussion on Project Camelot with a couple of other people around this matter of Aladdin and what it is and how I understand it. And what I can say is that I believe that it is the messenger of the end of time, so to speak. And
Okay.
the end of time, so I believe it is the blue star, the Hopi prophecy. And I do think also that it's a signal. You know, its closest distance from the Earth is, just a couple of days before the calendar comes to an end on October 28th of this year. And so I do also believe, having thought about it, that it may signal actually quite large cataclysms or earth changes on our planet. So this is something I'm writing about now. For the time being, I tend to believe that it is correct when the astronomers are saying that this is a small chunk of ice.
Right.
But I do think it is the messenger. And it's not only this Elenin, but it's also preceded by another comet that is coming in August that is called the Honda comet. And there are many prophecies regarding this that this is something I'm writing about, and it's what it means, I think, is that what this article aims to do is to create a completely coherent picture where we can see that the evolutionary model of 9 levels is completely fits with a number of prophecies regarding the end times. And here the comet Aladdin is, to me, my interpretation is that it's a messenger. It is the blue star of Hopi prophecy. That's what I think.
Well, that's certainly something to watch. Does it do anything before mid to late October? Does it?
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's many different theories, so I'm sure you're aware, or you might be aware. And there is the time in September where it passes between the Earth and the Sun, and which is by itself also a reason to think about it. And if you want to hear, I mean, the number of theories are vast, I would say. Some people say it's a manned spacecraft. Others say that it's linked to this Nibiru brown dwarf, and then there are people saying that its alignments are causing earthquakes at certain points of in its orbit, and
I've heard that.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's as with everything these days, there's always, it has to be spiced up with conspiracies and that this is being covered up. Right?
Well, it does make life interesting to have them.
Yeah, but it's it's almost becoming so commonplace that it gets boring, I think. But
that's true.
Well, I don't know, but I think it really is it's sort of that's the main way of looking at things these days, and I'm not sure even that it's the most if it's relevant, even if it were a conspiracy, so what? But anyway, but you get my take on it in essence, that yes, it is an end time messenger. And it really is a signal also, I think, for us to prepare ourselves spiritually, but probably also very much in practical ways. I do think there will be, even physically, even in terms of earth cages, a turbulent end scenario of the calendar.
Well, some of us WebBot people are interested in being prepared for lots of different things that could happen. So that's something that is kind of right up our alley in terms of being prepared. Thank you so much.
Hi, Carl. Five Cook here. My question concerns October 28th, 2011, which is the end of the Mayan calendar, end of the 7th day of the 9th wave. I know you've mentioned that a shift in consciousness toward more right brain, holistic thinking due to changes in energies from the galactic center, kind of a more positive, I think happier outlook will emerge with the new day. What does happen after October 28th?
You're asking after the day, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
I think, okay, so let's begin here that you mentioned the 8th wave, you mentioned the right brain half, and that is coming into activity, human activity, and I think that was essentially with the 8th wave. It's the 8th wave, which was the one that started, then I call it the galactic underworld, starting in early 1999, that sort of brings in really the new feminine, you might say, and it's a holistic thinking, seeing the whole picture, image orientation, very much. And this is something we see in how the internet has evolved, the interactive internet that has evolved during the 8th wave, which now is going towards images in a way that we haven't been communicating between human beings for a very, very long time. And the written word is sort of giving way a lot because people want films and people want YouTube and all these kind of things. Now, when we come to the 9th wave, I don't think that specifically favors the right brain half, but I think it favors the whole, you might say, the frontal lobes, the whole perception side of the human brain and the human mind. And so that's something a little bit different. You might say that the 8th wave, it might have created a balance between the right and the left brain halves. But the 9th wave creates a unity consciousness on top of that I believe is sort of to wrap it all up and sort of seal this balance and transcend it into unity, not just like balance between two polarized fields, but actually wrapping it up, so to speak, creating the unity between the two different polarities. So it's a little bit, that's how I look upon things. Then we brings all to the end of the calendar. And step by step, my fundamental take on this ninth wave is that we are inheriting a world that is not consistent with unity consciousness. And the lower frames of mind, going back about 5,000 years, and also including the whole industrial era of this seventh wave, and also the what you might call the right brain era of the starting in 1999. All of those have meant that we've had certain filters for our perception of reality, because we've been in resonance with a world tree, a cosmic tree of life that during these particular waves has endowed us with these kind of polarities. And the result is that we've created a world based on dualist frames of consciousness, or even in darkened frames of consciousness. At any rate, the world that has been created is a result of different kinds of filters. So now what's happening is that all of these filters are being removed. And it's not happening overnight, as I understand it, but it happens every time there is what you call a day in the ninth wave. It's each of the 7 peaks in this ninth wave. It creates a deepened frame of unity consciousness. This mind without any filters gets to be deeper every time there is such a peak in the ninth wave. And as that happens, it becomes clear to us that not only how we've in the past have been trying to conquer nature, but also how we've tried to conquer one another, so that a mentality of dominance has been created by each of these lower waves. And this is why our world looks the way it does, both in terms of good things and in bad things. Because partly we have inherited a world with all kinds of technology and conveniences that is created by the polarity essentially favoring the left brain half, the old one of 5,000 years. And the whole industrial world was created by an darkened consciousness. And now we're sort of seeing this. And of course, the way it works is that we tend to create a world outside of ourselves which is consistent with the kind of field that we are in resonance with. And now the filters are being removed. Everything becomes apparent. And the result is that chaos comes in our world, increasingly, more and more so with every this pulse of the ninth wave. And so to the surprise of many people that sort of have been taking these polarized fields for granted, their manifestations are crumbling, and it will be even more and more so. And the difficult part of this is, of course, that we're all today more or less entangled in this world created by filters without seeing reality exactly what it is. And as that happens, the world we've become accustomed to gets to be disturbed. And we're not in a position to sort of choose here, it seems, because, you might say, oh, we want to have all the conveniences we've already had. We just want to become enlightened in our minds. That is not what is going to, how it's going to work. Because as we become enlightened in this sense, that we become in resonance with a field without filters, that means that all aspects, even those that we must say have contributed to our convenient lifestyles, not for the whole world, of course, but for a certain section of the world, that all of these things will be put in question, disturbed, even collapse. So that's my basic framework of understanding where it's all going. And I believe that as we go forward, people will sort of divide up into those that are for this new transformation of consciousness to unity consciousness, and are willing to go the full ride, the whole roller coaster, so to speak. And then a large portion, maybe even the largest proportion of humanity, that will simply not want to go along and will resist and not understand what's really happening and what the origins is. I tend to think that I have just recently been writing on an article on these comments that are coming in, Honda and Calleman. And I tend to think that Calleman especially is like the blue star of Hopi prophecy, with its closest distance to the earth, almost exactly as the calendar comes to an end, and or at least at the midpoint of the seventh day. And I don't feel I know exactly what kind of a scenario will play out there. I just feel that drama will be added through these comets, which conform more to ancient prophecies, and that they somehow will help or trigger the birth of this more how shall I say, a more consistent alignment with this new unity consciousness that is coming. So this really might not, I'm not sure if I have answered your question, because you might have asked more exactly what will happen October 28th and onwards. And that, I believe, is sort of, generally speaking, outside of my ability to answer, except for to say in very general terms that it's the world that results from our projection of a unity consciousness. We will then start to project unity consciousness and let those projections manifest in the external world. And how that will look, I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows at this particular point in time.
Yeah, I can understand that. No, you answered it very well. Thank you. Speaking of comets and external forces, I know your website has mentioned the Japan earthquakes they had back in March being linked to these cycles of the ninth wave. Do you expect similar earthquakes to occur around October 28th?
No. Well, to begin with, I didn't exactly predict the earthquake, or I did not predict the earthquake. It just happened to coincide with the frequency increase, and the frequency increase, I think, is a part of our reality that I did certainly predict. What I did say, though, and it's worth repeating, I think, is that we should think a little bit what our earthquakes are. That ultimately earthquakes, they are the result of plate tectonics or continental drift, which is a word I prefer. And so they've been going on throughout the geological history of the Earth, essentially. And the Earth, in the model that I'm presenting, is really a global brain. with the Western and the Eastern hemispheres being parallel to our human brains with its left and right brain halves. So what that means is that the reason we have earthquakes is really that the world has needed to move its continent in order to develop a global brain. And I did make the interesting parallel in that article with what happened when the seventh wave began, which was in 1755. The parallel with the earthquake that destroyed Lisbon in that year. And so I which was also a 9.2 earthquake, a tremendously devastating earthquake. So I do think there might be some kind of adjustments going on when new waves are activated, and meaning that there is something happens in the interior of the earth that serves this the new field, that adapts to the new field that is going to be transmitted to the human being. And so that's sort of what I suggested as an origin to the Japanese earthquake, as well as to the Lisbon quake in 1755. It's interesting, though, also that how the philosophies have changed around these two particular earthquakes. The Lisbon earthquake, again, was, it's a long time ago. We have forgotten it. But certainly in Europe at the time, it was a tremendously dramatic event. One of the old seafaring nations of Europe, Portugal, basically saw its entire capital be destroyed. And it took a long time for that nation to recover. And the result was that a discussion started in Europe with Voltaire and different philosophers at the time who said that, there cannot be any God, because no God would allow for this kind of event to happen. And so it really fitted into the new endarkened philosophy, or the new endarkened mind that started in 1755, and where people became rapidly atheists and rejected all kinds of spirituality. Today, it's almost the other way around when we're entering the ninth wave. I shouldn't say that people are welcoming the God back into the picture, but what is happening is that it has led to certainly the questioning of the industrial world and all the consequences that it's having. It's sort of, if anything, it has brought people to turn away from pure materialism, making us realize the limits to that kind of endeavor, and starting to embrace other kinds of values. So I think it's quite possible that these particular huge earthquakes, they are linked to this beginning of these waves. But it doesn't mean that I predict any earthquake again, so to speak. I'm too uncertain about it to make that. And I'm also uncertain. Well, it's possible, but I wouldn't predict it. I'm not capable of doing that.
No, I understand. Okay, fine, Carl. Thank you very much.
Carl, it's Lenny here. I have a question to ask you after you mentioned what you did to Five Cook about entanglement and chaos. you said that as the filters are removed and chaos increases, entanglement is a factor. Wouldn't entanglement kind of stretch through the chaos to assist with the development of unity? Can you expand on entanglement and how it interacts with the chaos?
Well, in this case, I should start by saying that I don't mean the entanglement in the sort of quantum theory meaning of the word. I just mean
okay.
We are just entrenched, maybe the word. We're all connected in all kinds of ways with the old world. We're living in it, basically, and we are. So I should say that I don't mean it in the quantum sense of it, what should I say? Well, I think this kind of entanglement of ourselves to the old world of the previous filters, that means that it becomes inconvenient to use a mild word properly when the new pulses are coming in, the new unity consciousness is coming in. And of course, it also sort of sets a brake on how quickly we can move in this direction. And you can look, and maybe that is good in a sense. Otherwise, the change might be too rapid for us to be able to handle. But it's stepwise, and it's sort of, you might say, every time there is a day, every time there is a peak in this ninth wave, there is you might say that the unity consciousness takes makes itself a little bit more strong compared to the filtered frames of consciousness that have been dominating previously. Step by step, it's coming to dominate.
Well, thank you. I have another question about the Mayan calendar and the predictions of the Hopi people. Do they correspond? What is your thinking about that?
Well, the Hopi prophecy is a non-calendrical prophecy, which is true for almost all prophecies of the world. There's a number of different prophecies coming out of, you might say, Christian and Muslim what should I say, milieus, or like in the past 100 years or so, there are people that are seeing visions, and they are basically coming from a Christian background. And but these prophecies that these people are formulating are not linked to any timing, so to speak. They just see certain things. There is a consistency of what they see in the end time, but it's not timed. And it's in this that the Mayan calendar, I think, is unique, because it really has a timing that, in my view, is valid. And the Hopi does not have a timing. They talk, I would say, a little bit more loosely about the fifth world coming into existence. But that's not linked to any time. What I find interesting, though, when it comes to the Hopi prophecy, is that not only is it about the blue star that will appear, but it's also about a part of that is saying that when the blue star appear, the Kachina dancing in the square will take off his mask. And to me, that means basically what I've been talking about here, or my suspicion is that this refers to what I've been talking about here, namely that the mask means the filter. The filters will be taken off, And that's so when the blue star comes, there will be no more filters.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, it is. And also the kachina is some kind of a doll. And what I'm also been saying is really that we have been like puppets, doll puppets of creation, or the creator who has pulling the strings and in different ways through the activities of these different waves have given us certain filters and sort of just transformed us in all kinds of ways. And so the kachina will stop dancing, they say. Well, maybe that also refers to what I'm saying, that no longer will we be puppets of the divine plan. So these are, interpretations that I'm making of the Hopi prophecy, and its fulfillment. And they're possible. I'm sure there are many other possible meanings to it, but this is what I'm suggesting.
So that losing the mask, taking off the mask would be almost like becoming enlightened?
Yeah, that's what I think they mean.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Glua wants to ask a question to you now.
Okay.
Okay, Carl, you were talking to Five Cook about the after events of after October 28th, and the question I have is somewhat similar, but a little bit related, but more in terms of the kind of transition that we can expect going into this new level of consciousness, this new age that we're heading into. Do you expect a sudden and sharp transition on October 28th, or are you looking at a more gradual transition around that date and flowing into a new kind of consciousness level?
Well, I think this fall, and I'm meaning loosely speaking from 1st of August till the end of October, I think things will be very dramatic in the world. Very, very dramatic.
By dramatic, do you mean earth changes, volcanic events, earthquakes, etc.? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean primarily a collapse in the social economic system, but that will be complementing that with some kind of effects of an earth changes like nature that might be induced by the coming comets. And I'm not saying that I understand this fully. I think I have a good idea about why there would be like a social economic collapse. And we're really talking about a nation now, Greece, that is actually coming close to this. And nobody expected that even a couple of months ago. And what I mean is that they are, they're coming to the point where they're discussing not to pay any retirements, not to pay any salaries to the government, the employees of the government, and so forth. And unfortunately, I think this is sort of a step in this chaos that will spread, and we will all have to deal with something like that. And so that's what I see. But then by October 28, 2011, I think sort of things have the field becomes stable. That we're in resonance with, and that is, I believe, it's a stabilizing factor, and maybe even a relief, you might say. But then, from that point and onwards, it's one stable field. It's not all these shifts. At least not the way it has been up until now. And then things will be probably very gradual. And things will not change in a sense over a night, but there will be a transformation in our external world over maybe forever, I don't know, but not in the way that it has been, not in the way that it's been, that you can determine changes coming based on shifts in the Mayan calendar, not in that predetermined way, but rather the field will stabilize, but our how we express it may go on forever in transforming and changing, and that I'm open to that.
Well, it sounds to me like from what you just said, you're expecting most of the changing to happen between now and October 28th. Is that kind of what I heard? And then after that, it settles down? Something
like that. Most of the difficulties, I would say, is coming now.
Okay. Well, in talking about one of the astonishing developments on the planet, the Dalai Lama has asked to step down, saying that the time of the leader is over. And I'm wondering if this is part of the universal co-creation concept, the concept of not having leaders, but perhaps returning to small villages and hamlets around the world, and not having this massive world leader situation happening. Do you see that coming?
Yes, and you may notice that he actually made this declaration on the first day of the ninth wave, meaning that it's a seed in the sense of going from seed to mature fruit. So
it's a seed?
Yes, his declaration of saying that I no longer want to be a leader. It happened in that seeding period.
Okay.
Which is the first day. It's metaphorically. What happens in that time period are seeds that later will be developed into fruit. And I think that's exactly what is going to happen. And he is just wise enough, unusual in that sense, that he's wise enough to take the stand at an early point, and later it will continue in that direction. But as we've seen after these relatively smooth revolutions going on in North Africa, now there is much more resistance. It's not just flowing on, and I'm sure there will be much resistance also in the time ahead. But that's the direction I'm going, I think.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, hi Carl. I have a question to ask on behalf of forum member Jim D. I believe you are correct in saying that we are all aspects of the divine coming into existence. Can you give more details of how this is happening and what we can look for to show this is what is happening to us?
I think I would then like to go back to my most recent book, The Purposeful Universe, that does demonstrate that we are created according to a divine time plan. And so, meaning that we're here for a reason. There is a purpose with our existence. And it's also this, another conclusion from there is that we are created in the image of the earth, image of the galaxy, image even of the cosmos. And to say that we are created in the image of God, it's not something I can prove, but it seems like a very small step compared to saying that we are created in the image of the cosmos. And so that I also think then that it's obvious that we are in resonance with these larger systems of the universe, meaning that our existence is in resonance with it, and that we are aspects of the evolution of the entire universe. Our evolution is not separate from the whole that of the whole universe, and it's not separate then from the purpose of the whole universe. So that means that since we are able to have this form of resonance, it means also that we have a spark from the divine. That's what I would say. I'm sort of really just changing the terminology to make it a little bit more scientific, a little bit more possible to evidence, so to speak, and really saying the same thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that goes to what you were saying earlier about as above, so below, and you know, aspects of the fractalness of the cosmos. Makes sense to me. Thank you very much, Carl. And now Lenny is going to ask you some final questions.
Carl, you state that as creation accelerates, that the frequency of change stirs things up. With this, our perception grows spiritual and sensation-based. Realities lose importance. In all of this change, you suggest that our path to transformation may be as simple as being of service to others or treating people with compassion, kindness, and respect. Is this a correct understanding?
I think there are two questions here. Is it? Yeah, I think I'd like you to repeat what you said.
What I said, okay. In one of your, I can't remember where I found this, but it was in probably something you wrote. As our perception is growing spiritual, with all the change going on, and we're tuning into a higher frequency, material things may not be as important as they were before, and that and we're really working towards enlightenment. We're really growing in that direction, and that the path to transformation doesn't need to be going to ashrams or fasting for our lives, but perhaps as simple as kindness to other people and respect and compassion.
Yes. Okay. Now I get there, and yes, I don't necessarily think it has to do with going to ashrams. It could do so, but it would seem unfair because it was so large proportions of humanity that wouldn't be doing that, and I think it's this transformation. It's you know, when you talk about enlightenment, you might talk about a person that sort of has a certain radiation, a sort of, you would say, spiritual wisdom, and so forth. But it's also very much a practical path there. That most people probably will be taken. And that will include the whole shift in perception of ourselves and others, seeing that we are the same in significant ways, and meaning that compassion grows and empathy grows. And it's also very much, you know, I think that what you might say unity consciousness is something it's a word I use a lot, and you know, you could replace it with enlightenment, but enlightenment just has this very high associations, and that most people cannot really relate to it. But if you take unity consciousness, it may turn out that is something that will be in the time ahead expressed in a very practical way, in provide, for instance, people providing new kinds of economic solutions to our society and bringing them into practice, and people doing that, they would be also really developing unity consciousness, but they might never ever hear about the wisdom of some saint in India or something like that. They're just expressing in their real own lives a new relationship to others and creation. And I think we should be aware this whole range of all kinds of people are sort of needed in this world, and it is a whole range of ways in which such a evolution of unity consciousness might be expressed in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Carl. I have one last question. As I was thinking about what I wanted to ask you, it came to me that there's two sayings that sum things up pretty well for me these days. The first is, may you live in interesting times. And so, be careful what you wish for. Can you share with us your thoughts on the awe-inspiring wonder of these times in which we live and the importance of having clear intentions as they pertain to future events?
Yes. Okay. Well, I think this may you live, that's sort of a wish for somebody else. May you live in interesting times. And I think it's a wish that is no longer needed because it's just very obvious that we all are doing that. Whatever nature the changes will take, certainly we're living in interesting times, and that will continue. And I think we are really in for all kinds of surprises as the fall comes. Great apparitions. Now the other saying you had was, what was the other saying you had?
Be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for. Well, that is something I would not as immediately. I've heard this said before, and of course the idea is that there is such a creative power in the human individual, and what she sets to her mind, that if she actually wishes for something, it may come true, and then it may surprise her in such a way that it's not exactly desirable. But I think today we are, I think according to the cosmic plan in the ninth wave, it's not so much about us human beings setting like I want this, and then getting some kind of a vision, and then maybe it will not be to my liking eventually. I think there's a tremendous culling going on from the ninth wave, where only those wishes that are really aligned with the cosmic plan has a chance of surviving or manifesting. This might always have been true, but I think is much more true than ever. So I think the risks of manifesting something based on your vision that is not consistent with the cosmic plan, I think that is much less, that risk, in the ninth wave than it has been previously. I think the cosmic plan is now sort of more or less compelling us to wish only certain things within a certain framework, and only those things will manifest. Of course, we can always wish things, but only a kind of a narrow, it might be narrowing what we may actually manifest in this particular way.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one more question. It's really Lua's question, who was unable to ask it tonight. So I'm going to read you her question. There are several different perceptions of what it will mean to go from this age into a new age, or from this world into a new world, following the end of the universal co-creation cycles. Some people expect to shift from this three-dimensional world into a fifth density world. This would mean no need for food, water, shelter, etc. In other words, we would no longer have physical bodies, but would be spiritual beings. When I heard this described, it sounded very much to me like a description of life after death, rather than life on a physical planet as corporal beings. Other people think that the changes are dealing solely with Earth changes, with reasons ranging from a planet coming into the solar system to an Earth that is expanding to an erupting sun. Whatever it is, it appears to be cyclic, happening every 11,500 years, every 3,600 years, every 26,000 years, or a combination of all three. How do you feel about these two very different realities ahead of us? Are we going to continue as physical beings, or will the entire planet morph into a different reality of being?
Yeah, I think there are two questions in that. And the first one is the one with the 3D and 4D and 5D dimensions. And my answer there is simply that I don't quite know what people mean by these dimensions. So my friend and collaborator, Barbara Hancock, has written about 9 dimensions. So I think that's something a little bit different from these dimensions that you hear very commonly. But anyway, these dimensions, fourth and fifth dimensions, they're not part of my terminology, and I cannot really relate to it. But I can answer your question. I don't think that we will be like spirits without any substance, like dead people, as you say. I think after the completion of all of this creation, we will be very much physical people also, and otherwise I don't see why bother with all of this evolution of creation if it's just going to be spirit, because that could probably have been created in a much simpler way. So that's my. I guess I have two answers there. I don't use the terminology of 4 and 5 dimensions. I think it's very probably metaphysical people that are using that, and I can't really relate to it. But I do think that people will be very physical also after the calendar comes to an end. Then there is another question here. It's about the earth changes and some kind of cyclical physical things here. And here it's to me then what I always emphasize is that the Mayan calendar is the only calendar that is not based on the physical reality. It is not based on astronomical cycles, and this makes it. To me, that really becomes a cause for hope. I don't really believe in this Nibiru story. I don't think there is any evidence for it whatsoever. But if I did, everything would be about physical events. So there are these people talking about earth changes, almost like liking all these earth changes. Becomes very you completely miss this aspect of evolution that is expressed in the Mayan calendar about the evolution of consciousness and towards unity consciousness. And the way I look upon it, all of evolution is designed for that. And whatever earth changes or calamities or catastrophes that might be coming, they're actually, if you look upon it from my perspective, they are, you might say, necessary evils to produce this desired evolution of consciousness. It's possible that there are certainly there are. The universe is full of these different material cycles, astronomical cycles of all kinds, and I think, but those that are interested in the Mayan calendar, they have some added aspect of reality, which is the evolution of the non-physical reality.
So that the focus, really, the real focus isn't on the physical calamities that may or may not be coming upon us, but on the growth of the soul or the spirit and the unity of consciousness.
Yeah, it is. Or I'm trying to look upon it from the perspective of the creator, and if I were the creator, I would make a plan in terms of the evolution of the soul of the mind of people, and then when you start to think about yourself in that position of God, so to speak, if I were God, you realize it's not that easy to do, and that there will be costs for whatever kind of advances in evolution that you might want to accomplish.
Could you repeat the last phrase? I couldn't quite hear it.
Now, I basically just said that I'm just playing with the idea of creating a universe, and pointing out that almost all kinds of advances in terms of spiritual evolution or unity consciousness would have to be paid in terms of some price of negative effects on the physical level.
You think so?
Well, otherwise I think God would have created the world differently.
Well, I guess that would account for the evil twin brother, or the dual consciousness, or the duality of some peoples.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I've sure enjoyed, I'm sure we've all enjoyed this chance to chat with you. It's been really wonderful that you've been able to meet with us.
Well, thank you. And yes, I think it's been a very constructive dialogue. And I don't know who it was. There was somebody, I should acknowledge that. Somebody in was it you? Somebody in the group who suggested the idea that, the very end of since the beginning of certain waves create earthquakes. Maybe the end will also carry it. And I was very strongly influenced by that input, and I'm using that in the article that I'm writing about Calleman.
So I can't wait to read your article. Where will it be published?
It will be on my website.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Okay, thank you, Carl, for your time tonight. Tack så mycket. There is a Swedish proverb, those who wish to sing always find a song. Many in the world are glad you found your song, Dr. Calleman, as your knowledge and persistence in seeking the truth has helped many to awaken. On behalf of Fox and all the members of the WebBot Forum, we thank you, sir. In our own tradition, may you have many pies to come.
Thank you very much. Tack så mycket. I can answer to you too. It's been a great pleasure. Truly, I really mean that. It's been a very interesting dialogue, and I like this format of several people bringing their knowledge and coming with questions. And it's also, there is something very special with this WebBot project, because it really adds, it adds a a basis for talking about these matters, especially when it comes to emphasizing the uncertainty we would have in the future, but also, of course, the certainty that lies in the fact that there is still a future, and so far it's charted, and maybe there will become a time when it will be